Remember when they say family is the safest place in the world? That's a lie. The biggest lie I've ever heard. Because it was inside my own house, in my childhood bedroom with dolls on the shelf and drawings on the wall, that my brother did to me what even the devil wouldn't dare. And my father? Well, my father always thought the sun rose and set on that boy. Even today, at 73 years old, I can still hear that gruff voice saying, "Making things up again, girl?" Making things up. As if the belly that grew inside me at 14 was something I imagined. My name is Jessica Randall, but you can call me Miss Jessica. I was born in 1951 here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in a time when children had no voice, especially girls. Girls were supposed to stay quiet, obey, and be grateful. Today, sitting on the porch of my simple but honest little house on this hot July afternoon, I've decided to tell a story I've kept hidden for almost 6 decades. It's not a pretty story, mind you. It's the kind that makes your stomach turn, that makes you want to cover your ears, but it needs to be told. Because I know there are many girls out there going through the same hell I went through, thinking they're alone in the world. If you're listening to me now, tell me in the comments where you're from. I want to know if my story is reaching far, if there are people from all over America watching. And please, if you can, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, because each like, each comment gives me strength to keep talking about what many people prefer to sweep under the rug. I remember like it was yesterday, the first time I realized something was very wrong in my family. I must have been about 7, playing house in the yard, when I heard my father shouting at my mother in the kitchen. It wasn't anything new, he was always shouting. But this time was different. "Martha, stop coddling that girl. Let her learn that in this house I'm in charge, me and Tony." Tony, my older brother, 5 years older than me to be exact. Dark-haired, tall from an early age, with those green eyes that came from who knows where, because everyone else in our family had brown eyes. The neighbors were always saying he was too handsome, that he'd break many hearts. Little did they know that the first heart he'd destroy would be mine. My father, John Randall, was one of those men born in the wrong time. He thought women were meant to serve, that men don't cry, that one male child was worth 10 females. He worked at the nuclear plant. I don't know exactly doing what, but he always came home smelling of whiskey and cigarettes. When he was in a good mood, he ignored my existence. When he was in a bad mood, it was better to disappear. As for my mother, Martha Randall, a name that couldn't be more appropriate, she was a saint. Tiny, hair always tied in a tight bun, hands calloused from taking in other people's laundry. She tried, poor thing. Tried to protect me the best she could, but against my father there wasn't much she could do. "Stay quiet, my child," she'd whisper when Daddy started yelling. "It'll pass. It'll pass." The house where we lived was one of those 3-room places. A living room that served as everything, a bedroom for my parents, and a small room in the back that was mine and Tony's. In the beginning, when I was very small, we got along well. He taught me to climb trees, to fish in the creek that ran behind our house, to whistle. But as I grew older, things changed. It started slowly. A wandering hand here, a strange look there. I didn't really understand. I was a child, you know. I thought it was normal for a brother to want to hug his sister in that tight way, to want to sleep in the same bed even though he had his own next to mine. My mother sometimes came into the room in the middle of the night and saw him in my bed. "Tony, go to your own bed, boy." But he always had an excuse. He was afraid of thunder. He was cold. He missed when he was little. My father? My father thought it was wonderful. Look how much they love each other. Now that's a united family. And he'd pat Tony on the back with pride. He was the perfect son after all. He played baseball like him, drank like him, cursed like him. They were 2 peas in a pod. Father and son, thick as thieves, partners in everything. I, on the other hand, was the burden. The girl who was born when they wanted another boy. The walking disappointment. My father didn't hide it from anyone. "This one was a miscalculation," he'd tell his friends, pointing at me. "But what can you do? God wanted it that way." The first time I noticed something really weird was on an Easter Sunday. I was about 9, all dressed up in a yellow dress my mother had sewn. The whole family gathered, uncles, cousins, the house full. Everyone complimenting how pretty I looked, how I was growing into a young lady. Normal, right? Just family stuff. But Tony didn't like it. I saw it in his eyes. That sudden anger, that way of squeezing his soda cup until his knuckles turned white. When everyone went to the backyard for barbecue, he pulled me aside. "Think you're so pretty, huh? Trying to get attention?" I was confused. Attention from whom? I was just there, quiet in my corner, eating my piece of cake. But he continued. You're mine, you hear? Mine. I don't want to see you giving anyone else the time of day. Mine? What did he mean, mine? Brothers don't own sisters. But that day, at that exact moment, something changed. The way he looked at me became different. Possessive. Dangerous. And I, even without really understanding what was happening, felt afraid. A cold fear that crept up my spine and made my stomach turn. I tried to talk to my mother. Mom, Tony is being strange with me. She was washing dishes, hands full of suds, her always tired face. She stopped for a second, looked at me, and I saw it. I saw that she knew. I saw that she understood. But I also saw the fear in her eyes. The same fear I felt. It's all in your head, honey. Your brother loves you. He just wants to protect you. And she went back to scrubbing the plates with too much force, as if she could also scrub away the truth that we both knew but couldn't speak of. That's when I understood something terrible. I was alone. My father on his side, my mother too afraid to do anything. And there I was, caught in the middle, a 9-year-old girl having to deal with a monster who slept in the room next door. Things got worse. He started coming into the bathroom when I was taking a shower. Forgot my towel, he'd say. But he'd just stand there, watching. I'd shrink into the corner, try to cover myself with my hands. But he wouldn't leave. What's the matter? I'm your brother. You don't have to be shy around me. I started bathing with my clothes on. Seriously. I'd go into the bathroom dressed, lock the door, and only take off my clothes inside the shower stall. Even then, he found a way. He'd break down the door, say he needed to use the bathroom urgently. My mother would complain about the broken latch. My father would say it was my carelessness. Nights were worse, much worse. He'd wait until everyone was asleep and come to my room. At first, he'd just sit on the edge of the bed, running his hand through my hair. You're beautiful, you know that. The most beautiful in the family. I'd pretend to sleep, squeeze my eyes shut, pray for him to go away. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. When I turned 11, things completely spiraled out of control. It was on my birthday, actually. My mother had made a simple cake, cornbread with strawberry jam. Just the 4 of us sang happy birthday, no friends, no party. My father gave me an old doll he found somewhere. You're getting too old for this nonsense, he said. But here you go. Tony gave me a necklace. A cheap plastic necklace, the kind they sell at dollar stores, but he made a big ceremony of it. For my beautiful little sister. And he hugged me in front of everyone. A hug that lasted too long, held too tight. I felt his hand sliding down my back, stopping where it shouldn't. I looked at my mother in desperation. She looked away. That night, he came to my room again. But this time it was different. This time he didn't just watch. You're a young lady now, he whispered in my ear. Time to learn some things. I was shaking so hard the bed moved. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth. Be quiet. If you scream, I'll tell Dad you've been fooling around with Mike from the grocery store. You know what he'll do to you. I knew. Of course I knew. I'd seen him beat my mother for much less. Once, she smiled at the gas delivery man and got beaten for a week. Imagine what he'd do to me if he thought I was offering myself to the neighborhood boys, as he used to say. So I stayed quiet. I bit the pillow and stayed quiet while my brother did things that even today I have trouble putting into words. It hurt. It hurt so much I thought I would die. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the pain in my soul. To know that this was happening and nobody would help me. The next day, I could barely walk. My mother noticed, of course. What's wrong, Jessica? Why are you limping? I made up that I had fallen. She didn't ask anything else, but when Tony wasn't looking, she put some antiseptic on my wounds. Her hands trembled, silent tears streaming down her face, but she didn't say anything. She never did. From that night on, it became routine. 2, 3 times a week, sometimes more. He'd wait until everyone was asleep and come. I learned to detach myself. It's amazing how the mind can escape the body when it needs to. I'd imagine I was flying, that I was a free bird in the sky, that I was anywhere but there, in that bed, with that weight on top of me. My father continued to think Tony was the greatest. The two would go out to the bar together, come back drunk, singing. "This is my son," he'd shout for the whole neighborhood to hear. "A real man, not like that boring girl Jessica." I was visibly withering. I stopped eating properly, stopped talking. At school, the teachers would ask if everything was okay at home. I'd nod yes. What was I going to say? Who would believe me? Tony was everyone's favorite, handsome, polite, helpful. He helped old ladies with their groceries, played ball with the neighborhood kids. The perfect son. No one imagined the monster he was when the doors closed. There was a day I almost told everything. It was to Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor. She was different from the others. No husband, lived alone, worked outside the home. The other women talked about her behind her back, said she was a lesbian, that she wasn't respectable. But she was always kind to me. "Jessica, honey, you're not well," she said one day, finding me crying behind the church. "What's happening?" I opened my mouth to speak. The words were there, on the tip of my tongue. My brother. He does things. But then I remembered my father. What he was capable of doing. Not just to me, but to my mother, to anyone who got involved. And I shut up. "It's nothing, Mrs. Johnson. I'm just sad because I fought with a friend." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push. Years later, when everything had already happened, she sought me out. "I knew, Jessica. I knew, and I did nothing. Forgive me." I forgave her, of course. What could she have done? In those days, nobody talked about these things. It was a family secret, a forbidden subject, a shame carried in silence. When I turned 13, my body started to change. Breasts growing, hips widening, the period that came and scared me because no one had ever explained anything to me. My mother gave me some old rags and said, "Now you're a young lady. Be careful." Careful of what? I was already taking every precaution in the world, and it didn't help at all. Tony got even worse with the changes in my body. It was as if I had become an even more valuable trophy. The nightly visits increased. Sometimes he wouldn't even wait for everyone to sleep. He'd corner me in the bathroom, in the pantry, in any dark corner of the house. "You're getting hot," he'd say. "Soon the boys will start sniffing around. But you're mine, remember?" Mine. I was an object. A thing. His private property. Stamped and registered. And the worst part is that everyone seemed to agree with this. My father was always saying, "Tony's the one who'll choose who you marry. He knows the boys in town, knows who's decent. Marry." Little did he know that the only man who had touched me was his own son. The last straw came on a December afternoon. It was hellishly hot, the kind that leaves everyone irritable. My father had gone to work, my mother had gone to wash clothes at the river. I was alone at home, not alone. With him. "Come here, Jessica. Let's take advantage of being alone." I tried to run, but he was faster. He grabbed me by the hair, dragged me to the room. This time I fought. For the first time in all those years, I fought. I scratched, bit, kicked. But he was stronger. He always was stronger. "Think you're tough now, huh? I'll have to teach you a lesson." The lesson hurt more than all the other times combined. When it was over, I was bleeding. A lot. He looked at the blood on the sheet and shrugged. "Clean that up before Mom gets home." But I didn't clean it. I couldn't even get up. I lay there, in that red puddle, wishing to die, wanting to disappear, evaporate, cease to exist. That's how my mother found me. Her scream still echoes in my ears. A scream of horror, of pain, of guilt. She knew. Of course she knew. She always knew. My God, my child, my God. She hugged me, rocked me like when I was a baby. "Forgive your mother. Forgive me." That day, something in her broke. Or maybe it got fixed. I don't know. I just know that she picked me up, took me to the bathroom, washed me carefully. Then she made a bundle with our clothes. "We're leaving," she said. "Where to, Mom?" "I don't know, but we have to get out of here." But we didn't leave. When we were at the door, bags in hand, my father arrived. Drunk, as always. He saw the scene, understood immediately. "What nonsense is this?" My mother tried to explain. She stuttered, cried, begged, showed the blood, the bruises. My father listened to everything in silence. Then he looked at Tony, who had appeared behind him. "Is this true, son?" Tony shrugged. "Jessica's making things up, Dad. You know how women are. Must be jealous because I got a girlfriend." And my father believed him. Or pretended to believe. Or simply didn't care. He slapped my mother so hard she fell. "Stop protecting this whore. Want to run away? Run. But the girl stays. Someone has to cook and clean in this house." My mother looked at me. I saw the exact moment she gave up. On me, on herself, on life. She dropped the bag on the floor and went to the bedroom. We never spoke about that day again. Life went on. The nighttime visits continued. My body continued to be invaded. My soul continued to die little by little. But something had changed. I was no longer that frightened girl who bit the pillow not to scream. Now I was a survivor. And survivors do whatever it takes to stay alive. Even if inside they've been dead for a long time. That's how it works in a house where the monster has the king's protection. Where the queen is too weak to protect the princess. Where screams are muffled and tears are invisible. That's how a girl learns that family can be synonymous with hell, and the worst was yet to come. The year 1965 started differently. I woke up on the first day of January feeling my stomach turning, but it wasn't a New Year's hangover. We didn't celebrate anything at home. It was nausea, the kind that comes from nowhere and makes you run to the bathroom. I thought it was something I ate. Little did I know that nausea would change the course of my life forever. January flew by. The nausea continued, especially in the morning. My mother noticed, of course. Mothers notice everything, even when they pretend not to see. "You eating spoiled food, girl?" I shook my head. Spoiled food we didn't have. We barely had good food, let alone spoiled. It was on a Tuesday in February that it hit me. My period was late. Very late. I didn't really pay much attention to these things. I was never regular anyway. But when I put together the lateness with the nausea, with the sore breasts, with that strange desire to eat pickles with peanut butter, my God. No, it couldn't be. But it was. I remember the desperation I felt, sitting on the bathroom floor, counting on my fingers how many months it had been since I'd had my period. December didn't come. January didn't either. February was halfway through, and nothing. 3 months. 3 months carrying that inside me. The panic was so great that I threw up right there. This time, it wasn't pregnancy nausea. It was pure terror. 14 years old. I was 14 years old and pregnant by my own brother. How was I going to tell this? To whom? My mother already knew about the abuse and did nothing. My father would say it was my fault, that I seduced Tony, and him. What would he do when he found out? I decided to hide it. There was no other way out. I started wearing the baggiest clothes I could find. My father's shirts, my mother's loose dresses. I tied rags around my belly, tightened them so much it hurt. Anything to disguise the volume that was beginning to show. But a pregnant child's body can't be hidden for long. It was my mother who noticed first, of course. One morning in March, she came into the room while I was changing clothes. She saw the already prominent belly, the swollen breasts, the stretch marks beginning to appear. Her face lost all color. "Jessica, my child, are you—" I started to cry. It was the first time in months that I cried for real. Not that silent crying I had learned to do so as not to bother anyone. I sobbed so much I could barely breathe. "Mom, I didn't want this. I swear I didn't want to. He always—" She hugged me, hard, like she hadn't hugged in years. We cried together there, on the cold floor of the room, 2 women shattered by the same misfortune. "We have to tell your father," she said finally. The blood froze in my veins. "No, Mom. For God's sake, he'll kill me." "And what do you want me to do, Jessica?" "Soon it won't be possible to hide anymore." She was right. At 4 months, it was already difficult to disguise. At 5, it would be impossible. But the fear was greater than reason. "Let's wait a little longer. Just a little longer." She agreed. Poor thing. She was also terrified of my father. But she started taking care of me in secret. She saved extra food, brewed herbal teas that eased the nausea, rubbed oil on my stomach to prevent too many stretch marks. Tony continued coming to my room. It's surreal to say this, but he didn't notice anything. Men can be so oblivious when they want to be. He did what he did and left, not noticing that my body was changing, that I moaned not from pleasure. It was never pleasure, but from pain, because everything hurt more with the baby growing inside me. April came, and with it my desperation increased. The belly was already impossible to hide completely. I started wearing a shawl all the time, even in the scorching Tennessee heat. At school, I made up that I had a back problem. That's why I walked hunched over. The teachers believed it, or pretended to believe. But at home, it became increasingly difficult. It was on a night in May that everything fell apart. My father came home drunker than usual. He fought with my mother over the cold dinner, broke 2 plates, kicked the dog. Tony tried to calm him down, but not even the favorite son succeeded this time. "Where's that whore Jessica?" he bellowed. I was hiding in the room, praying for him to forget I existed. But that day, I wasn't lucky. He kicked down the door. He saw me huddled in a corner, trying to cover my belly with the shawl. He took 2 steps in my direction and stopped. His eyes went from my face to my stomach, back to my face, down again. "Take that rag off, Dad, Take that rag off." With trembling hands, I took off the shawl. I stood there, the 5-month belly clearly visible under the thin dress. The silence was worse than any shout. He turned red, purple, eyes bulging from their sockets. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low, dangerous. "Whose is it?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. "Whose is it?" How was I going to answer that? I'm asking whose child this is. John, calm down. My mother tried to intervene. He slapped her without even looking. Shut up! He turned his attention back to me. Whore, I knew it. Always knew you were no good. Who was it? The grocery store boy? The butcher's helper? How many were there, you slut? The words cut me deeper than a knife. Slut. Whore. At 14 years old, pregnant by my brother, and that's what my father saw in me. Dad, it wasn't... Don't call me Dad, he spat the words. I'm not the father of a whore. That's when Tony came into the room. He saw the scene, understood immediately. But instead of fear or guilt, what I saw on his face was anger. What's going on here? Your sister. My father pointed at me as if I were a disgusting animal. The whore is pregnant. Tony looked at me. Our eyes met for a second. In that second, he knew I was going to speak. He saw it on my face. And he decided to act first. I knew it, he said calmly. I saw her with Mike from the gas station, several times. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't believe me. Mike, the gas station attendant, a 16-year-old boy who barely looked at me. But just the mention of the name was enough for my father to explode completely. That son of a bitch, I'll kill him! And he went out the door, staggering drunk, but determined. Tony went after him, not to stop him, but to make sure the story would stick. I was left alone with my mother. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and despair. Why didn't you tell the truth? Would it have helped? I replied, too tired to cry. Do you think he would have believed it? She didn't answer. We both knew the answer. What happened next was an even worse hell. My father went after Mike, made a huge scandal. The boy's family was terrified, swore he had never touched me. And it was true. But my father had already spread all over town that the gas station attendant had abused the innocence of his daughter. In 2 weeks, Mike's family moved away from town. They fled from the shame, the threats, the gossip. An innocent boy paid for my brother's crime. And me? I officially became the family's shame, the lost one, the one who had dishonored the Randall name. My father wouldn't even look at me anymore. My mother took care of me in secret, but always with that look of someone carrying a burden too heavy. Tony. He became the hero, the brother who tried to protect the family's honor, the one who tried to warn the father about the sister's inappropriate behavior. Disgusting. At night, he still came to my room sometimes. Less than before, because now I was damaged goods, as he said. But he came. And when he came, he'd whisper in my ear, "This baby is mine. Never forget that." June passed slowly. July was even worse. My belly grew, the baby moved, and I withered inside. I stopped going to school. My father forbade it. I'm not going to be embarrassed by you anymore. I was locked up at home, a prisoner carrying another prison in my womb. The only outings were to church. My father insisted that I go, that everyone see my sin, my shame. The church ladies whispered, pointed, shook their heads in disapproval. I sat in the last pew, the shawl covering my now enormous belly, and prayed. Not for forgiveness. What forgiveness did I need? But for strength, for a way out, for a miracle. In August, 8 months pregnant, I could barely walk. Swollen feet, aching back, the baby weighing like lead. My mother delivered babies at home. She was a midwife in her spare time, when she wasn't washing clothes or getting beaten by my father. She prepared me for the signs, taught me how to breathe, how to bear the pain. It's going to be hard, she said. You're very young, very small, but we'll manage, we. As if she could share the pain of childbirth with me, as if she could carry with me the weight of giving birth to a child who was also my nephew. It was on a September dawn that the pains began. I woke up with a twinge in my back, then another in my belly, liquid running down my legs. My water had broken. I called my mother softly. She came running, assessed the situation. It's today. The following hours were a blur of pain. I bit a cloth not to scream, not to wake the men of the house. My mother boiled water, prepared clean rags, whispered words of encouragement. Strength, honey. Breathe. That's it. Like that. It's almost over. But it wasn't almost over. The baby was breech, wouldn't turn. My mother was sweating as much as I was, her skilled hands trying to maneuver him. Holy Mary, help my daughter, she prayed between procedures. It was 16 hours of labor. 16 hours that seemed like 16 years. When the baby finally decided to be born, I no longer had the strength to push. One more time, Jessica. Just one more. And it was in a last wave of pain that he was born. A boy. Small, but perfect. Dark hair, fair skin. His eyes, when he opened them, were green. green like Tony's. My mother cut the cord, cleaned the baby, wrapped him in a swaddling cloth. When she placed him on my chest, I felt something I didn't expect. Love. Pure, devastating, unconditional. That little creature was not to blame for anything. He was innocent, pure, deserved all the protection in the world. "What are you going to call him?" my mother asked. Before I could answer, the door opened. My father came in, Tony behind him. They saw the baby, saw me exhausted and bleeding on the bed. "It's a boy," my father stated. A shadow of something, pride, passed over his face. It quickly disappeared. "Doesn't matter. A whore's son is always a whore's son." But Tony approached. He looked at the baby, saw the green eyes, the jaw already showing signs of being square like his. He smiled. "The kid's handsome," he said. And for a moment, a brief moment, I saw in his eyes something like remorse? Guilt? No. It was possessiveness, twisted pride. That baby was living proof of his power over me. "He'll be called Charles," my father decided. "Charles. A proper man's name. Maybe he won't take after his mother. Charles." My son had a name now. Charles Randall. No father on the record, because officially, no one knew who it was. Mike had been gone for months, so they couldn't put his name. It was just mine. In the days that followed, the house was strange. My father pretended the baby didn't exist. My mother took care of us both as best she could. And Tony, he prowled. He'd watch the baby nurse, change diapers, sleep. Sometimes he tried to hold him, but I wouldn't let him. My whole body tensed when he came near. "He's my son too," he said once, softly, when we were alone. "No," I answered with all the firmness I could muster. "He's mine, only mine." But I knew it wasn't true. In that house, in that family, nothing was just mine. Not my body, not my son, not my life. The milk was slow to come in. Charles cried with hunger. I cried with desperation. My mother made teas, massages, but it seemed my body refused to nourish that child who came from so much suffering. It was Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor, who saved the situation. She appeared with a can of formula, said it was left over from her grandchildren. A lie, of course. She had bought it. But she presented it in a way that my father couldn't refuse without seeming worse than he already was. "Accept it, John. It's for the child. He's not to blame for anything." And so Charles survived his first months. Formula donated by the neighbor, clothes that mysteriously appeared at the door, a blanket here, a pacifier there. The town knew. Everyone knew. And some, few, tried to help as they could. But the situation at home only got worse. My father drank more, hit more. My mother visibly withered away. And Tony started making plans. "When the kid grows up, he'll be just like me," he'd say. "I'll teach him everything. He'll be my partner, my blood." The terror I felt hearing that was worse than all the violence I had suffered. My son. He wanted to turn my son into a monster like him. No. No way. I would die before letting that happen. And that's when I started planning our escape. Alone, at 15 years old, with a baby of a few months, no money, nowhere to go, but I had to try. For Charles, for the innocent child who deserved a chance to be different, to be better, to be free. The problem was, how to escape from a prison where your jailers sleep in the next room. How to protect a child when you yourself are still a child. How to find salvation when the whole world has turned its back on you. The answer would come in the most unexpected way possible, and it would change our lives forever. But I'll tell you that later. The plan to run away kept hammering in my head day and night. Charles was already 3 months old, drinking well from the bottle, sleeping almost the whole night. But how was a 15-year-old girl, without a penny to her name, going to manage to run away with a baby? Where to go? With what money? It was December when I gathered the courage for my first attempt. My father had gone to work. Tony had gone to play basketball. My mother was in the backyard hanging clothes. I took Charles, wrapped him in a blanket, put in a grocery bag his few clothes and a can of formula. I didn't even have a suitcase. I was going to leave like a homeless person. I reached the gate. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode. 1 step on the sidewalk. 2. 3. That's when I heard my father's voice. "Where do you think you're going?" He hadn't gone to work. He was hiding, waiting, as if he knew I would try. I turned slowly. Charles pressed against my chest. I was taking the baby for some fresh air." The slap came before I finished the sentence. I fell sitting on the sidewalk, protecting Charles with my body. He started to scream, frightened. "Lying whore! Thought you were going to run away with the bastard?" He dragged me back to the house by my hair. locked the door, took the key. From that day on, I became an official prisoner. I couldn't even go to the backyard without supervision. January 1966 came hot and suffocating. Charles was growing, looking more like Tony each day. The same green eyes, the same square jaw. He was my blessing and my curse. I loved that child more than my own life, but each familiar trait was a reminder of the horror I had lived through. Tony began to take more interest in the boy. He wanted to hold him, make faces, play. I was disgusted, but couldn't always prevent it. My father supported it. Let the uncle take care of his nephew. It's good to have a male figure around. Male figure. If he only knew what kind of figure that was. One afternoon, I overheard Tony talking with a friend. When the kid grows up, he'll be my buddy. I'll teach him everything I know. Women, booze, fun. He'll be a real man, not a sissy raised by a woman. I froze. He wasn't just talking about teaching Charles to play ball or fish. He was talking about turning my son into another predator, another monster. No, never. I would rather die, would rather kill, than let that happen. It was on a February night that I tried again. This time I was smarter. I waited for everyone to fall into a deep sleep. I took the kitchen knife, forced the window of the room slowly, without making noise. I passed Charles through first, then squeezed myself through the opening. I was almost reaching the street when the neighbor's dog started barking. It woke up the whole neighborhood. Lights turning on, people looking. My father appeared at the door, in his underwear and slippers, furious. "Get her!" I ran. With Charles in my arms, barefoot, I ran like never before. But where to? I didn't know anyone, had no family besides that one. All the dark streets looked the same. The baby was crying, I was crying, desperation taking over. I ended up hiding behind the church. I crouched there, praying for dawn, for a solution, for a miracle. But no miracle came. My father came, with Tony and 2 friends. They found me easily. Small towns don't have many places to hide. The beating I took that time almost killed me. I was beaten until I passed out. I woke up 2 days later, all bruised, barely able to open my eyes, they were so swollen. "Next time I'll kill you," my father promised. "And the bastard with you." I didn't doubt it. The hatred in his eyes was real, palpable. If I tried to run away again, I'd wake up in a coffin. If I woke up at all. March passed, April too. I lived like a ghost in that house. I took care of Charles, did the household chores, got beaten when I stepped out of line. Tony continued visiting me at night when he felt like it. Less than before, now I was used, damaged, but he still came. "You're still mine," he'd say. "No matter how many children you have, children, plural." The terror of getting pregnant again consumed me. But what could I do? Locking the door didn't help. He'd break it down. Screaming didn't work. I'd get beaten more. Defending myself was impossible. He was stronger. It was in May that I met Rosie, a girl my age who started attending church. She had come from New York with her family. Her father was a transferred banker, different from everyone in town. She wore pants, cursed, smoked in secret. At first she scared me. Then she fascinated me. She was everything I wanted to be, free, brave, self-possessed. We started talking after Mass. She didn't judge me, didn't whisper behind my back like the others. "How old is your son?" she asked one day. 8 months. "And the father?" "There is no father." She looked at me in that way that only another woman understands. There's always a father. The question is whether it's worth talking about him. I didn't talk, but I think she understood anyway. She started showing up at my house with flimsy excuses, borrowing a book, asking for a recipe. My father didn't like her. "That one's not a decent girl." But my mother defended the visits. "It was good to have company," she said. What no one knew was that Rosie was helping me plan. She had contacts in New York, new safe houses, places for women like me. Places that accepted single mothers, where they didn't ask questions. "But you need money for the ticket," she explained. "And something to sustain yourself until you find a job. Money. Always the damn money." Where was a girl locked up at home going to get money? The answer came from where I least expected. June arrived with the town's 4th of July preparations. Fireworks, parade, barbecue. My father decided that the family would participate. Appearances, always appearances. He forced me to wear a gingham dress, put a ribbon in my hair. Charles was in my arms with a little patriotic outfit. At the celebration, while my father drank with his friends and Tony danced with the girls, I managed to get a moment alone. I sat on a bench away from everyone, rocking Charles, who was restless with the noise. That's when she approached. The mayor's wife, Mrs. Laura Wilson, rich, elegant, childless. Everyone knew she suffered from not being able to have babies. "May I hold him for a bit?" she asked, looking at Charles with that face of someone dying of longing. I let her. She took him with such care, such tenderness. Charles, who was shy with strangers, calmed down right away. He even smiled. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "So beautiful." We stayed there in silence, her rocking my son, me thinking about life. Suddenly she spoke. "It must be hard, so young, alone." "It is," I agreed. I had no strength to pretend. "If you need help, anything." I looked in her eyes. I saw kindness there. True kindness, not the fake charity of the church ladies. "Are you serious?" "I am. Very serious." And that's how it started. Mrs. Wilson began to help me in secret. She'd send care packages, clothes for Charles, sometimes money. Always discreet, always through third parties. My father thought it was charity from the church. With the money she gave, I started saving for my escape fund. I hid the bills in the lining of the mattress, among the diapers, in any corner I thought was safe. Penny by penny, bill by bill. July flew by. Charles was already crawling, babbling his first words. "Mama" was the first. I cried so much when he said it. It was proof that despite everything, I was a mother. A real mother, not just the girl who gave birth. August brought another frustrated attempt. This time, I didn't even get to leave the house. Tony caught me packing the bag at night. "Going on a trip, sis?" he asked with that cynical smile. Charles has a fever. I was going to take him to the clinic." "Liar." He approached, cornered me against the wall. "You know what happens to liars?" His hand on my neck, squeezing. Not hard enough to kill, just to remind me that he could. "If you try to run away again, it won't be Dad who kills you. It'll be me. And the bastard? Well, we can always make another one, right?" The threat to Charles was what broke me. I could endure anything, but not losing my son. I put away the bag, dismantled the plan, for now. September came, and with it Charles's first birthday. I made a simple cake with what flour I had. We sang happy birthday softly. My father didn't like fussing. The boy clapped his hands, smeared his face with frosting. For a moment, a brief moment, we were just a mother and son celebrating life. But reality returned quickly. That night, Tony drank too much. He came into my room staggering, reeking of whiskey. "It's been a year today," he said, looking at Charles sleeping in the makeshift crib. "A year since my son was born." "He's not your son," he laughed, an ugly laugh without humor. "No? Look at him closely, the eyes, the jaw. He's the spitting image of me." "Get out of my room." "Your room." More laughter. "Nothing here is yours, not the room, not the son. You're mine. Forgot?" He grabbed me. I tried to fight, but he was strong, was drunk, violent. Charles woke up with the commotion, started crying. "Shut him up," Tony growled. I broke free, ran to the crib. I rocked Charles, desperate to calm him. Behind me I felt Tony approaching. "Good to see you two together, mother and son, my family, his family." Bile rose in my throat. I held Charles tighter, as if I could protect him with my body. "One day," Tony continued, voice slurred with alcohol, "one day I'll tell him. I'll tell him who his real father is, and then the three of us will be a real family." That was the last straw. There, at that moment, with my son in my arms and that monster at my back, I made a decision. I was going to run away, even if it cost my life. But I was going to get Charles out of there, was going to save him from that hell. What I didn't know was that the opportunity was closer than I imagined, and it would come in the most tragic way possible. October started differently. My father was strange, quieter, drinking less. At first I thought it was just in my head, but my mother noticed too. "John's acting odd," she commented one day, washing dishes. "He's tired, no appetite." It was true. The man who had always been a bull, strong and brutish, seemed to be withering. Yellowish skin, sunken eyes. But nobody said anything. In our house, showing concern was a sign of weakness. It was on an October morning that everything changed. I woke up to screams coming from my parents' room. I ran there with Charles in my arms. My father was lying on the floor, convulsing. Foam coming from his mouth, his whole body rigid. My mother kneeling beside him, trying to hold him. "Call for help," she shouted. Tony appeared, frightened. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. He ran to call the pharmacist. He was the closest thing to a doctor we had back then. But it didn't help. By the time Mr. Thompson arrived with his medicine bag, my father had stopped foaming, stopped moving, stopped breathing. Heart attack. The pharmacist diagnosed. Massive. Nothing could be done. Dead. My father was dead. The man who terrorized me my whole life.